What was the other game that you were playing?
The other game that I've been playing a lot of lately, and I really like this game, is a game called Cauldrons of War, Eastern Front, 1944 or 1941, Barbarossa and Beyond. It is a turn-based war game. I don't know if I would call it a grand strategy game, but it's a turn-based war game that takes place at a really high level. A very the scale is very removed from the front. So basically, you play as either the Germans, or I guess actually the Axis powers, because the Finnish and Romanian sides have soldiers in it as well, or you play as the Soviets during the invasion of Germany in June of 1941, and you basically operate as like the supreme commander of all the forces on either side,
Ooh,
but it's turn based, so randomly throughout the campaign, or not randomly, I think so they're pre-scripted. You get different events that you have to make decisions on. Like for example, the first event that pops for the Germans are how are you going to treat Soviet commissars when you capture them? Right, they're members of the Soviet Communist Party. Are you going to shoot them on sight, which I think is historically what the Germans did, or are you going to treat them like other prisoners of war and just sort of treat them accordingly? And so you're given these types of decisions, and if you decide to shoot them, it increases a score called barbarism. If you let them go, or if you don't shoot them, it doesn't increase barbarism. And barbarism is a well. One other thing is if you decide to shoot them, you also get cohesion bonuses to your soldiers. So it's kind of like the units are more, I don't know, for they're happy you're shooting people innocently. But in any event, you get barbarism score when you do some of these activities, and as the barbarity score goes up, the Soviet troops fight harder and they're more difficult to fight. But some of those decisions are more difficult to make because you'd say, oh, we'll always choose the humane option because then you'll keep barbarity low. But the way the choices are structured is sometimes that can lead to cohesion penalties for your units. Sometimes it can lead to logistical problems for your units. I'm not sure I like the way it almost portrays war crimes as justifiable expedients. But it is an interesting mechanic. But where the game really shines is you're basically in charge of 4 different or 5 different army groups that are invading the Soviet Union. So you're in charge of Army Group North, Center, South, the Romanian front, and then 2 Finnish fronts. And you don't issue tactical orders. So you get a certain number of command points that are assigned to you every turn, and I can use those command points. I can go into one of the army groups, and I'm looking at one of them right now, Army Group North. It's the first turn of the game. Army Group North consists of the 18th Army, the 16th Army, and the 4th Panzergruppen. And so I can do 5 things with those 5 points. One of the things, and basically my goal is to move across the map of Russia to take key strategic points where I earn points. So there's a few ways you can do that. You can try and rush the objectives and just take territory as quick as you can, but that leaves Russian troops intact. Or you can try and destroy the Russian army, or you can kind of mix and match. And so if you wipe out all the Russian army early, that might make your job a little bit easier in the mid game, but then new Soviet reinforcements could come in and you may have lost too much time and it may be winter and other things like that. But if you move too quickly, you can get yourself into a situation where you penetrate really, really deep, but your logistical situation is such a train wreck that your offensive will bog down. But the decisions that you're making, it's like I've got these 3 army groups, and I'm not ordering tactics at all. So each army group has an operation that it's undertaking. So, for example, the first operation that Army Group North is undertaking is called the Baltic Offensive, which essentially is the drive into the Baltic states. And if I click on my 4th Panzergruppen, I can issue an order to launch a blitzkrieg attack, which uses 1 panzer, one command point, uses 1 ammunition, 1 fuel, and 2 aircraft. And so that's basically like Stukas come in, they dive bomb the enemy units, you use an armored fist to break through the enemy lines, and then you advance, in this case, I just advanced 30% of the way toward my objective while destroying 3 Soviet infantry and impacting 5 cohesion penalties on them. I also captured some enemy fuel. At that point, I then can choose to reverse my front for another point because now my armored unit is isolated and exposed. And by reversing my front, I've just wiped out an enemy unit that was in my way. And so, I've progressed another however far down the line. But what I really like about this game is that the game works in operations. So each front has an objective that it's trying to accomplish, and you have to get to 100% to get there. Once you achieve that objective, you then meet with another objective. So the first objective in Army Group Center is the road to Minsk. Once you take Minsk, it's the road to Smolensk. Once you take Smolensk, I think it's the road to Vitebsk or something like that. And each time you do this, you're running into enemy units, but you're not fighting tactically. You're just giving general orders to army and corps size commands, which I think is really cool because too many, and this is, I belabored the point getting to it, way too many war games, when you're the commander of an entire field of armies, way too many war games tell you, oh, I want to know how this regiment is fighting. I want to move each one of these units across a hill. I want to tell these units to flank this regiment. You're a field marshal. You don't do any of that shit in this game. You don't do any of that. You are basically saying, hey guys, your objective is Minsk. I'm giving you 3 armies to go take that objective. I would like you to use your armored fists to create a pocket and to destroy the enemy units. I would like you to assault enemy fixed positions. I would like you to resupply, refit, get more ammunition. I would like you to, attack or do whatever. And that's what you're doing. You're not issuing tactical orders. Operational plans are drawn up by your subordinates. You're just telling them how to accomplish those. You're just telling them the strategic direction. This is a game that I think gets what being a senior level general is really about way more than games like Strategic Command, where you're commanding every single unit and telling them all what to do. Or any kind of tactical game where you tell them every little thing, you want to micromanage every little thing. I think a lot of wargamers have a tendency to want to micromanage. This game isn't about that. It is an operational level strategic game about World War II on the Eastern Front during the initial German invasion and the initial Soviet counterattack in the winter offensive of 42. And it's only $5 on Steam. The map quality could be improved a bit. There's a few little minor glitches here. I think it's made by like one dude. But I think it's a breath of fresh air. It does a lot of things differently. I've been enjoying myself with it. You can play through a whole campaign in 2.5 hours. I don't think I'm doing a great job of explaining all the reasons I love this game, but I absolutely love this game.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about a lot of games, first of all, I have to say that I think it's okay that a game puts you in the role of the field marshal, but also allows you to play with all the divisions, because that is still fun, and it's a game, and it's completely unrealistic. I think Hearts of Iron 4 was trying to address this by trying to basically force the player not to be able to play with their individual divisions, but make them give it to the AI. And that upset a lot of people. I didn't like that either. However, it's a really good point that we need more games like this that... So I think... basically, it's unrealistic, essentially. It's unrealistic to be able to control every division and have perfect cohesion between your different units, like they're all attacking at exactly the right time. And, there's not battle delay or orders delay, some of these things are abstracted, like your command points or whatever. But yeah, there's not a lot of games that just really tie your hand and force you to play at the highest level only, Is there any other game like this? There probably is.
There's elements, so like the war crime stuff that I was talking about, I think Decisive Campaigns has elements of that. But I can't think of a game that does it quite like this. The UI is nothing flashy, nothing special, but I think, and let me just also say, I'm not criticizing games like Hearts of Iron or even War in the Pacific. I love War in the Pacific. It's absurd to think that Nimitz or King, really, would be ordering around individual ships or individual battalions of infantry to different locations or telling them, hey, you're a battalion on this army. I want you to fortify. Like, there's elements of that game that are definitely silly, that are not represented in any one position. I think what I love about this game is that, that's fine. But this game does something that I've never seen another game really do this way. There are elements of it that different games do, but I think it's just really cool the approach that they took with this game, and I think it's very different, and I think it's refreshing.
You know what's funny is that this game's approach, it's a $5 game. you mentioned. I've only watched your videos on it. I watched one other video on it as well, but it was short. And essentially, my only experience of this game is through videos of gameplay. It's funny because this is the easier way of doing it.
Oh, for sure. It's not a complex or intimidating looking game at all. Like, I think the game has some problems in communicating information or what you should be doing. I think there's definitely UI or UX changes that could be made to make things a little bit more clear. But you're right. This has to be a simpler way of doing things than trying to rivet count.
Yeah, and yet people make games like Decisive Campaigns Barbarossa. I mean, this is exactly... We were just talking about Eastern Front games. This is an Eastern Front game that, instead of playing Decisive Campaigns Barbarossa and having control of all the divisions, which is what that game allows you to do, this would be like, no, in fact... You know what? It's kind of like these co-op games that people put together where they take a single-player game and they mimic the chain of command just by introducing a lot of people. It's kind of like what we might be doing in that War in the East game, is that each person will take an army group and you get your orders about what to do, what priority, like what targets to prioritize in your area from a head leader. And the even more complicated games, I've heard that, what's his name? Telemachus or whatever. He runs co-op games out of the Matrix Forum where they even go one level further, where you have people controlling cores even. And people have done this with Hearts of Iron games where you just have one supreme leader doing the research production, but then you have multiple army commands. And the only problem with all of those is that none of those are going to give you the fog of war. Like I said, it's still going to be perfect cohesion for any... And everyone can see the full map, which is already more than people could really do in real life. So, but yeah.
I think Hearts of Iron does like a perfect blend of everything. You know, like you can go down to the nitty and gritty of just dealing division, moving 2 divisions out of the 120 that you have along the front, or you can just tell them, all right, I need you to go to Moscow. You know, I'm assigning, all these 120 divisions to this commander. Just get it done. I'm going to deal with the Western Front. So I like that Hearts of Iron kind of gives you like the choice of doing something like this, where you're more like a field marshal, or you can go down from field marshal all the way down to a division commander level. So,
I mean, I think there's room. I think there's room for both. I think the fact that this game does what it's trying to do and doesn't do everything else, I think is what I appreciate. And I think, there's nothing wrong with a game knowing what it wants to do and knowing what it wants to try and do to make decisions about things it's not going to do. I think it's perfectly acceptable for a game to say, I'm not even going to try and model these other elements. And you know what? I think most games that do that will do a better job at what they do than if they try to do everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. How'd you find this, by the way?
I think I just randomly saw it on Steam. I was looking at some Eastern Front stuff on Steam, and I just saw this thing, and it was like $5. And most games you see on Steam for $5 are not going to turn out to be something that's all that interesting. But I remember I looked at it and I put it in my wish list, and I wasn't very impressed by the map. It didn't look like a high resolution. It looked kind of confusing and a little bit jarring. And I saw some of the screens where you give some of the army order commands, and I was like, oh, okay, is this going to be like a weird block game that's not going to like be something I'm super interested in? And then I, randomly one day, I think I was just like, it's $5. I'm gonna buy it and check it out. And I played it. And I was like, whoa! It's not blocks at all. It's not just mashing blocks and dice together. And I played it, and I ended up playing. I wanted to stream something that night. I couldn't find anything I really felt like playing. So then I ended up starting this thing at like 11 o'clock. I didn't stream it. I played it till about 3 a.m. and just trying to figure it out, trying to learn it a little bit, because it doesn't do a great job of telling you everything you need to know. And then the next day I ended up streaming it for 2.5 hours. It was only a draw. I didn't win, but it was a heck of a fun time. It seemed like a lot of people enjoyed it. We had a really good crowd out. There was a genuine amount of interest in it. I think the key things I would do is figure out a better way to give some feedback to users so that they don't miss it. Figure out a slightly better... There are guides available, but I don't think people are going to read through those, even though they're put together by the developer. Maybe the developer doing a couple of video tutorials might be a good idea. and then improving the overall quality of the map, jacking the resolution up a little bit. I really like the artistic style because it almost looks like you're playing a World War II atlas, which is really cool. But I think the quality of the imagery needs to be improved a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that.